is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's tied. He throws. It is.
Hey there, and welcome to the March 17th, 1975 issue of Sports Illustrated here on the Past Our Prime podcast. I'm your host, Scott Johnston, along with my two other compadres, Bill Mahoney and Mark Hoffman. And today we are talking one of the best point guards to ever come out of the ACC, former Tar Heel great Phil Ford. I don't remember Phil from his playing days, but everyone says he was a dynamic player. Mark, you were just turning 33 years old in 75. What do you remember about the freshman Ford?
That was 45, not 35.
Exactly.
No, I remember him. He was like, he was one of the guys in North Carolina. I just remember because, point guards have the ball most of the time. So and he looked great in that Tar Heel blue, man, that light blue Tar Heel colors. But I always rooted for North Carolina. I liked them a lot when I was a kid growing up. I don't know why. I mean, not obviously UCLA was my favorite team, but I had an affinity for North Carolina for a while.
Dean Smith was the head coach of those Tar Heels teams, and he was famous or infamous, depending on how you look at it, for the four corners offense. Billy, what do you remember about that tactic Smith would employ back in the day? I hated it.
Well, it was not exciting, but it gave them the opportunity to either it gave exactly Phil Ford the opportunity to find an open guy or to drive to the basket, which worked perfect for his game because he had great court awareness, and also his teammates knew he was a great passer as well. So in a sense, it worked perfect, but it's god awful boring.
I hated it, and it got really bad in the early 80s. I can remember basketball games where they would start the forecourt stall 5 minutes into the game, 6 minutes into the game. It's like, really? I don't need to see this.
I mean, at least because of that hurried up the shot clock being implemented.
It did. It began the beginning of that. Yeah.
So there was no shot clock back in the day. So in the second half of games, if UNC had the lead, let's say they were up by 10 with 6, 7, 8 minutes to play, they would run the four corners. And for anyone who is too young to know what that is, that basically meant they'd have, four guys just kind of passing it back to each other, and they would just pass and pass and pass. And it was mind-numbing. And if you were the team that was trailing in the game, you were forced to either go for a steal and then give up potential back door lay-in or foul. That was the thing, was you had to foul. And they say that the ball handling skills and basketball IQ of Phil Ford made him the perfect person to run that. And we will talk to him about that in a little bit when the great Phil Ford joins us on the Past Our Prime podcast. Scorecard, Billy.
Okay. Most kids, when they go to college, there's a couple sports they usually attend because that's where most of the fans are. That's football and basketball, obviously. Baseball, not always. Doesn't get a lot of attention, which is unfortunate because it's great sport, as we all know. But the university, or I'll say Cal baseball coach Jackie Jensen, decided to try something different. To drum up interest for his team, he donned a sandwich board with, on the back, it said, "Baseball game today, 2:30, Evans Field," and walked around campus with that. It reminded me a little bit of the Die Hard 3, Die Hard with a Vengeance, but he didn't have the same words on it. So that was actually very good. But he said it turned out, everything went great because they did get a number of new fans there that came and saw the game. He said he was a little embarrassed at first. This coming from a guy who was the Cal 1949 Rose Bowl. He was the star of the Cal 1949 Rose Bowl team and the American League MVP back in the 50s. But he said it was no worse than facing a major league fastball, and there's no other way to get the message across that the Cal baseball team is good. But then I went a little deeper. I thought, who is this Jackie Jensen? Jackie Jensen was a pretty good player. He played in a 6-year stretch with the Red Sox. He averaged 111 RBIs. And why did he retire at 32? Anybody know?
Nope.
Fear of flying.
Really?
Yep. He was so scared of flying that ended his career. He actually tried to make a comeback, but he just couldn't get over the fact that now they put teams on the West Coast. He'd have to fly farther, so he retired.
So if he'd played in Babe Ruth's time, it would have been fine. They all took trains.
That's exactly right. But Jackie Jensen, impressive man.
Yeah.
3 impressive.
One of the original great two-sport stars.
Yes.
Yeah, he was a football
Good
player,
point.
too, right?
Yeah.
He was on the Cal 49 Rose Bowl team, so it's a
But
good
that
guy.
gives me an idea. That sign you're talking about. Why don't we do that? We put on Mondays, we'll wear the sign wherever we walk and says, "Past our prime podcast about
That's
to
right.
drop today. Please listen on Apple Spot." And you just have that sign around your neck.
That's a good idea,
And you
Mark.
just
That's a
walk
good
all
idea.
over town, with that sign.
And drop us off in the toughest
Yeah, or you know
areas.
what,
Yeah,
Mark?
good.
Mark, maybe you get one of those signs like on the corner there where they flip them all around and stuff, and you do that.
Yes.
I'll do the flip
Yes.
thing.
Yeah, that works. What else on the scorecard do you have, Mark? Something about the Commanders?
Yes, or that time, you might find this hard to believe, but the Commanders used to be called the Washington Redskins.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that it's amazing? Anyway, in 1975, they announced they were raising ticket prices. They raised it from 12.5% to 22%. So seats will range from $11.28 to the top price of $18 a ticket. Oh my God.
But back in 74, that had to be just a huge amount though.
But
Highest in the league.
Yeah, but I mean, it's all relative. I mean, you used to go to a movie in the 70s for $3 on a Saturday night. But some people thought that this was the reason they raised their price was to cover some sort of a stock transfer. So Jack Kent Cooke, owner of the Lakers and Kings, had partial ownership in the Redskins. And this helped him increase his ownership. And I think he became the majority owner of the Redskins eventually. And he owned the team until 1989. So when they won the Super Bowl, in the 80s, he was the owner of the team. And any guess who he sold it to in 89?
Tell me.
Daniel Snyder.
Yep, one of the most beloved figures in sports.
Yes, still loved in
that
Washington.
Yeah.
Just a
I looked
great
it
man.
up in 2025. The cheapest tickets to a Commanders game, $100 to $140. The average ticket price is just under $500.
Nothing wrong with that.
VIP seating for seats at the 50-yard line, $17,550. So a little more than $18.
How many games you guys want to go to this year? We can just
I
get
was
those
thinking
VIP
we
ones.
could put a season ticket package,
Yes, I think you might be right. And the
Yeah,
planes,
That makes
we
like
can
the
do it.
NFL Sunday tickets seem pretty cheap.
Hey, we got that TWA money. We can do whatever we want.
Yep. They said it, Bill.
Johnny Miller, a golfer, as we all know. Serenity is knowing that your worst shot is still going to be pretty good. I'd say that. I would never be able to say that. He could.
I'd say serenity now.
Yeah, serenity now, insanity later.
Mark.
I've got instead Renee Muth. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, of Immaculata College women's basketball team. And we had talked about them earlier. Before, you had before it was an NCAA sport, there were all these other kinds of leagues. And this college kind of dominated women's basketball in the 70s, the early 70s. But when they won their first national championship in 1972, their uniform were tunics. They were like a blouse, a belt, bloomers, a skirt. They looked like they were going to Catholic school. It looked like maternity outfits. Some of the teams in their league actually offered to steal them so they wouldn't have to wear them. But so basically they were asking Renee about, the changes in women's basketball, because in 1975, they didn't have to wear those really ugly uniforms. But if you go online and look up Immaculata, IMMACULATA College women's basketball and check out their outfits. It's a sight.
It reminds me, I'm picturing at least like what the women in League of Our Own were wearing when they played baseball. Somewhat similar to that. at least
Or
in
it's
my
like,
head.
They got to
if you
bring the
go-
tuna back.
if you go back 100 years ago and you look at bathing suits, women would wear like these dresses to go swim
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
that's what this was like.
Yeah, they were hot.
There's nothing better than seeing those long. Yeah. No
Yeah.
thanks.
Run down by a Ford. Conference tournaments used to be the best. I loved college hoops then, but in the 70s, not every major conference had a tournament, but the ACC did. And in 75, freshman Phil Ford was leading the Tar Heels to a wild tourney win. Wins over Clemson and Wake Forest, both in overtime, got them into the championship game against defending national champions NC State and their all-world guard David Thompson. The night before, Thompson had helped NC State win a dramatic game over Maryland, had to be helped off the court with leg cramps. And in the finals, Thompson once again battled cramps and Ford. Ford would average 26 points a game in the tournament and helped end the legendary Thompson's college basketball career. The tournament expanded in 75, but only 2 teams from the ACC would advance, Maryland and the winner of this UNC-NC State game, and that was the Tar Heels, led by tournament MVP Phil Ford. Was an amazing tournament. I think every game in the tournament was a close game.
Yep. And how much they expanded the NCAA tournament to that year in 75?
Was it 32?
Yes, we've gone from 25 teams to 32, which is half the size of the field, less than half the size of the field now.
Right, because now it's 68, right?
Right, if you consider the playing games. Well, the year UCLA went to the finals in 1980 when they shocked everybody, the tournament had just been expanded. This was 1980. The tournament had just been expanded to 48 teams, and I think they were the 48th team the final team to make the tournament, and they went all the way to the finals. Should have won the final.
I'm just saying, just to Phil Ford, what a gift. Phil Ford going to North Carolina. I'm not saying it made a difference, but after the Ford era, then came James Worthy, and then came Michael Jordan. It seems like Ford sort of opened the door back to going to North Carolina and making them the dominant school they still are today.
And I want to ask him about his teammates, which there were some pretty well-known teammates. But
Yeah.
what I'm interested in is their point guard, Brad Hoffman, because when you got a name like that, you're good.
Ford was the first freshman to start the first game of his college career under Dean Smith, and he was up to the task, averaging 16.4 points and over 5 assists a game, running the offense. He would go on to be a 3-time All-ACC player and the Conference Player of the Year in 1978. He's the school's 4th all-time leading scorer and was the 2nd pick of the 1978 NBA draft by the Kansas City Kings. He would go on to win the Rookie of the Year. And the great Phil Ford joins us now from his car. Keep your eyes on the road, Phil. Welcome to the Past Our Prime show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Phil, 50 years ago, you're just 19 years old. I think you turned 19 the month prior, and you were on the cover of Sports Illustrated after an absolutely sensational showing in the ACC tournament. What was that like for you to be on the cover of SI?
Well, I think the entire team, the whole team should have been on the cover. And I remember when Coach Guthridge called me and told me that I was going to be on the cover, that's the first thing that I said, because, that tournament was a testament to Coach Smith, because early in the year, we had kind of struggled a little bit. There was this tournament that we played in called the Big Four tournament, and it consisted of NC State, Carolina, Wake Forest, and Duke. And we came in last place in that tournament, and that was in December. But Coach Smith kept coaching us, and we kept getting better, and we were just in a position that to win, I think, probably the closest ACC tournament ever. I think the widest margin of victory in any game was about 6 points. So a lot of teams could have won that tournament, but we were just fortunate to win it.
Yeah, North Carolina wins a national championship in 1957, but they weren't a powerhouse the way they were when I was growing up. And that really was because of what Coach Dean Smith brought to that program. What was it like to play for him?
Well, he was a great, great man, first of all. I think that, to me, he's the greatest coach to coach in this sport. He just happened to be a great man to happen to coach basketball. And, playing for him, his loyalty and, playing for him, you were going to get better. There's not a player that played for Coach Smith that didn't get better under him. And, he was just fair. He was just a great, great person and greatest coach in any sport to me.
So Phil, this is Bill here. You were born and raised in a very small town in North Carolina, Rocky Mount. I'm sure you watched a lot of Tar Heel games growing up. What did it feel like when you first went to North Carolina to put on that jersey for the first time? Must have been amazing.
Well, yeah, you're exactly right. I was actually born in Kannapolis, North Carolina, and moved to Rocky Mount, was raised in Rocky Mount. But I became a Carolina fan when I was in the 6th grade when Charlie Scott started playing in North Carolina. I think everybody in my elementary school at the time wanted to go to North Carolina and be the next Charlie Scott. So Carolina was always my dream school. And actually, Coach Smith told me that I may have to play junior varsity my first year when I got there, but I still wanted to go. I wanted to play for Coach Smith. I wanted to play in Carmichael Auditorium. I wanted to go to school, go to class at Carolina, walk down Franklin Street. Believe it or not, when I first got to Carolina, I struggled a lot. My first 2 or 3 games at Carolina, I was struggling so bad that a reporter wrote that this forward is an Edsel. But Coach stuck with me, and the team, we just kept getting better and better, and it's just a testament to the type of coach and how great a coach Coach Smith was for us to win the ACC tournament my freshman year.
Yeah, and we know that Coach Smith didn't like to play freshmen very much, but you were the first freshman to start for Coach Smith. How did that come about, and how did he tell you that you were going to be starting?
Well, as I said, earlier, I didn't think I was going to start when I went to North Carolina. I was prepared to play junior varsity. Now, deep down in my heart, I thought I could at least make the varsity. I didn't think I would start, but I thought I would make the varsity. But if I didn't, I was prepared to play junior varsity. But I wasn't the first freshman to start at Carolina because freshmen have started, but I was the first freshman to start his first game at Carolina. And, it was just a tremendous honor. I was just so happy and so thrilled to be at my dream school. And I wanted to do so well and play so well, but it didn't start off that way. But as I said, Coach Smith is a great teacher, and he stuck with me, and I just kept getting better and better, and the team kept getting better and better.
That ACC tournament, some say in 1975, might have been the best series of games ever played in college basketball. It wasn't just you guys beating North Carolina State, but didn't you have to play 2 overtime games just to get to that game?
We certainly did. We played Wake Forest in the first game and played Clemson in the semifinals, and both of those games were overtime games. It was a controversial call in the Wake Forest game that Wake Forest made a full court pass, and one of the referees said the ball hit the scoreboard. I've got a good friend to this day, a guy named Skip Brown, who was a great, great player at Wake Forest, and every time we see each other, he's complaining about the ball didn't hit the scoreboard, and I'm always telling him the ball did hit the scoreboard. Those 2 overtime games, and then we played NC State, who had won the national title the year before, and I actually probably went to more NC State games as a senior in high school than I did North Carolina games. I was actually at the game when David Thompson failed. He was the best player in the country his last couple of years in college. The game that he fell and hit his head. So to beat them was a tremendous accomplishment for our team, because we were very young. We were a very young team. But Coach Smith to coach us from losing 2 games in the Big Four tournament, ACC champion, in a couple of months, it's just unbelievable.
we had Monty Tao actually on the show, and he talked about that North Carolina State team, and actually David getting hurt the way he did, and then coming back one game later. But what I wanted to ask you was this issue of Sports Illustrated. You were on the cover this March 17th, 1975. What was it like for you to see yourself on the cover of the magazine in such a big spotlight as a freshman?
Well, it was a tremendous honor, but as I said, I think that it should have been our entire team because of what our team accomplished. It wasn't just me. It's a great honor that I was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, but individual honors don't really mean a lot when you're in a sport like basketball. Any honor that you get, you really don't do it yourself. It's not like tennis or golf. You couldn't have done it without your teammates. And, a whole lot of people could have been MVP of that tournament. I think Walter Davis could have been MVP of that tournament. I think Brad Hoffman, who hit the big shot against Wake Forest to send the game into overtime, could have been the MVP of that tournament. So, it was a tremendous honor. But like I said, a whole lot of people could have been MVP, and it probably should have been the entire North Carolina team.
Phil, when I was growing up, I didn't know a whole lot about college basketball, but I knew your name. I knew you in such my small little world. But what I loved about you is your court sense. Did that come naturally? You just seem to have an amazing knowledge of knowing when to pass or when to drive to the hoop.
Again, Coach Smith. When I first got to North Carolina in high school, I had averaged about 32, 33 points a game. And, I was, how you say, I guess I was kind of wild. I wasn't very under control. And Coach and I had this thing between he and I that a good idea and a bad idea. And if it was a good idea and I turned the ball over or made a move and it didn't work out, it was okay. But a couple bad ideas, I had to go over there and sit beside him. And I just kept getting better and understanding what he wants, and understanding what you could do and what you couldn't do. The thing in North Carolina, I think, especially for point guards, is just learning everything. Because at Carolina, offensively, when I was there, you had to call the offenses. You had to call the sideline out of bound plays. You had to call the baseline out of bound plays. You had to call the plays against a zone. You had to call the plays against a man. And believe it or not, we even had different defenses that we would get into after we scored a basket. We could have one defense where we would trap on the first pass. So we had one defense where we would trap when the guy dribbled across the court, or then we would play straight man to man, or we had 2 or 3 zones that you can get into. So, that was the toughest thing as a point guard, is just understanding everything.
You've mentioned him a few times, Coach Smith. We've all seen him on the sidelines. We know his greatness. What was he like as a person, and just how important was he in your development? I know you touched on it a little bit.
Well, how much time do you have? He was a tremendous person. Number one, I don't think that most people that I think the average person, if you bring up Coach Smith, wouldn't realize how intelligent he was. He was a math major. He could have the ability to come up with things. For example, depending on the team that he had, he could come up with plays offensively to exploit what each individual was good at offensively, and can cut them up with defenses that we could do that would give this particular team a chance to win every game. And he had the ability to convey that vision to us as a team of what he wanted it and how he wanted it done. And we just believe that if we did everything that he said, we would win. He always said that we won, the team won, and he lost. But we kind of took it the other way. But let's just say he was a tremendous man. He had a great influence on me, especially my spirituality in my life, where I am with that right now. as a freshman, every freshman, the first semester at North Carolina was required to go to church. And as a player, you know, when I would, after practice, sometimes in my locker, he would have a pamphlet about spirituality. As an assistant coach, I get back from lunch, there's a book on my desk. So he just kept planting that seed. And eventually, you know, that seed took root. So he was a tremendous person. Can't say enough good about him, his loyalty to us. He just happened to be a great man that happened to be the best coach to coach any sport.
You mentioned your teammates earlier, and you touched about how this wouldn't be possible without them. And you mentioned Walter Davis and Brad Hoffman, which, by the way, I like his last name, but also Mitch Kupchak on that team. Can you talk about those teammates of yours and what they brought to the team and how they helped you be a better player?
Man, we were so close. That's the main thing. As a team, our chemistry was as tight as it could get. And, you know, when you start talking about Kupchak and the guard and Kuster and Davis, you know, guys that, you know, didn't play a whole lot like Dave Hanners. Like Dave Hanners in practice, Dave Hanners guarded me as good as anybody's ever guarded me in my life. He was a little 5'10", 5'11" guy who was strong as an ox, quick as an ox, could probably outrun everybody on the team, and he was very physical. And, you know, we were just a good team. And there wasn't anything that could happen in a basketball game that we hadn't gone over in practice at one time or another. So, you know, we were just fortunate, great chemistry. You know, those guys, I remember playing with Kupchak. You know, every point guard has not, we laugh about this to this day. You know, every point guard has I call it his go-to play when you've got to have a bucket. You know, late game, running down the stretch. We had a play called Fist 5, and that was some action to get Kupchak on the block. And, you know, he always delivered. You know, that was my go-to play, Fist 5. And, you know, I was just fortunate. You know, that's a big reason why, you know, I chose North Carolina, not only because that's where I wanted to go and because of Coach Smith, but, you know, when I chose North Carolina, Kupchak was a sophomore. Davis, the guard, and Kuster were freshmen. And I know that's who I would be playing most of my career with. So, you know, I was very fortunate that, you know, I chose North Carolina. But when I chose North Carolina, there was a guy on the team named Ray Harrison who had started a couple of years of point guard, and he was just tremendous. And I would have played behind him definitely, but he got sick early in the semester and had to leave school. So I wound up starting that year.
North Carolina wasn't the only team you played for under Coach Smith. 1976, you're the starting point guard on the U.S. Olympic team that brings home the gold. You're one of 4 Tar Heels on that team. What was that experience like?
Well, that's the only time in my life where I've actually heard Coach Smith say winning is the most important thing. You know, at North Carolina, we talked about playing as hard as you could and playing together and playing smart and having fun. But in the Olympics, Coach Smith said the most important thing is to win these 7 games. And we weren't selected to win. Coach Smith got a lot of criticism because the selection committee selected Mitch Kupchak, Tommy Guard, Walter Davis, and me from North Carolina, but also from the ACC. They selected Tate Armstrong from Duke, Kenny Carr from North Carolina State, and Bear Shepard, Steve Shepard from the University of Maryland. So that was seven players from the ACC. But he also on that team was Quinn Buckner and Scott May from Indiana. And Coach Smith and Coach Knight were great friends. And so Coach Smith knew that Quinn Buckner and Scott May would do, you know, what he asked them to do. And then there was, going back real far, and there were 3 other players. Phil Hubbard from Michigan, it was Kemp. Right now, I can't remember the other two, but he just put together a great team, and we just kept getting better and better. And I don't think Coach Smith per se wanted the best players in the country, individual, but he wanted the players that he thought that would listen and do what he said to do, because he didn't have a lot of time to put up with problems, because he had to put together a team in such a short period of time. Ernie Grunfeld was on that team also, and Adrian Dantley were the other two.
Yeah, a couple of good ones. Tell me the emotions that go through you after all that work is over and you hear that anthem and you get that medal to hang around your neck. What is that feeling like?
That's interesting you ask that question, because I get that a lot. And the older I get, the more it means to stand on the podium with the national anthem playing and that gold medal around our neck, especially after all the criticism that we got from most of the reporters in the country that year, saying that, we weren't experienced enough, we weren't tough enough in the middle, we just couldn't play with the more experienced teams around the world. It was very rewarding.
Where's the medal these days, Phil?
I have it. It's in my home. It's interesting that you said that, because I have lost it a couple of times. One time, my son was in the first grade, and they had to write a paper about their best stuffed animal, and there was a PTA meeting later in that week, and my wife and I are walking around looking at everything, and we get close to my son's bear, and he had my gold medal around the bear's neck. So it's not treated like royalty in our house.
You're talking about the Olympic experience and amazing stuff, but it was you, Phil, that made the late free throws that ended up giving the U.S. the 3-point lead that was able to hold off Puerto Rico. How did that game against Puerto Rico bond you guys for the rest of the Olympic tournament?
Puerto Rico was sensational that game, and they had a great player in Butch Lee. Butch would go on to beat us in the national title the following year, but Butch was just unstoppable that game, and the entire Puerto Rican team played great. And just fortunate that I was fouled at the end of the game, and I made 2 free throws, and we were able to get past that game. And once we got past that game, I think that was the closest game we had. But Puerto Rico against us, they were sensational, and can't say enough about them, but we were fortunate to come away with a victory against them.
So let me get this right. So you have a dominant freshman year, or a great freshman year. You're named the MVP of the ACC tournament. As a sophomore, you win a gold medal. Now in your junior year, the team is going pretty far in the tournament. You end up hurting your elbow. How did that affect you during the tournament? And I know you played Marquette in the title game. Would that have made a difference if you were healthy?
You can't say. That's part of the game. But it wasn't only me. Tommy Lagarde tore his anterior cruciate and, wasn't even dressing with the team. Michael Corn, had a bad sprained ankle. Walter Davis had a broken finger. And I had the elbow, but, that's part of the game. I have to give credit to Marquette. They were sensational. Butch was sensational. You can't say, if we were healthy, this or that. That's part of the game. You just have to give Marquette credit. But I think you also have to give Coach Smith credit for getting us that far, with those injuries to his team.
So you weren't able to win the title, but you come back years later as an assistant coach under Dean Smith. What was it like working as an assistant under him and then actually getting to win a title as an assistant working with Dean?
It was unbelievable. It was a dream come true. I mean, working with Coach Smith and learning from Coach Smith was just something that no amount of money can buy. He was so smart, and to see him so calm and cool under pressure, I think that's what helped our teams a lot. He was never flustered. He was always cool and calm and he was such a great teacher. It was amazing. I was very blessed to have been an assistant to him and to Coach Guthridge.
What was it like though winning that title that year under him? I mean, is it different as an assistant coach than as a player when you win a title?
I don't know. You know, I was awful happy as a coach. I'm not sure if I could have been much more happy as a player, but it was an amazing tour.
Let's hope he comes back.
Been many better teams at North Carolina. That chemistry on that team was just great.
Now that you
Several times, seemed like a really nice guy.
And if you saw him you know, I'm in practice sometimes, and he's saying things, and you know, it's kind of just like Coach Smith. You know, he was so brilliant, so smart as a coach. You know, everywhere he went, that team is going to get better because that's the type of coach he is, and he's a great guy and a great friend.
We are talking with 20
Brown too.
Did he have a big candy jar? He used to have a big candy jar and offer it to everyone. Did he have that when he was when you were coaching under him?
No, I didn't see that. You know, we lived in the same apartment complex in Charlotte, and he and I would go for walks all the time. You know, I'd be laying on the couch watching TV, and he'd knock on the door to go for a walk. And, you know, he's the head coach, and you can't say no. So I say, all right, here it comes.
We are talking with 2012 College Basketball Hall of Fame inductee Phil Ford. And Phil, I know other teams did it, but Coach Smith was the master of it, and that's because of the talents you brought. And I'm talking about the four corners offense. Did you like running that? Probably didn't mind because it meant you were winning.
Again, that's a credit to Coach Smith using the rules to his advantage. And I'm going to tell you guys something that the reason that four corners work that you probably don't understand. And I'm going to ask you a question. Okay, from 1975, 1976, 1977, 1978. Playing four corners, how many points per game do you think the University of North Carolina averaged?
Well, you would think not a lot, but I'm going to guess now a lot. It's like 80.
I'm going to say in the mid 70s.
Yeah, we did. We averaged 80 points. Now think about it. 80 points in the 70s is that's a whole lot of points for a team that averaged
yes,
that played four corners. So, you know, we were looking to score out of four corners, but if the defense stayed back in a zone or, you know, wouldn't come out and we had the lead, you know, we take the score as it was.
Do you think, though, overall, when they got rid of it, they went to a shot clock? It was good for college basketball, though?
I think it didn't hurt a team like North Carolina because we had the talent, you know, to play up tempo with anyone. I think the shot clock probably hurt smaller schools than it did in North Carolina. But when we used it, that was just Coach Smith, you know, using the rules to his advantage. And we practiced on it every day. You know, people, you know, give me a lot of credit in four corners, but it wasn't me. It was what Coach Smith told me to do. So, you know, it wasn't easy to do. It was something that was pretty difficult. And we had certain rules in it. You know, we weren't going to take a jump shot. We were only going to take layups or free throws. Walter Davis was the only one that was allowed to take a 2-foot shot because that was just like a layup to him. But you had to have good ball handlers in the game, and you had to have guys in the game that could hit free throws and, you know, pressure free throws because usually, like I said, it was a tight game and, you know, a lot of time. So, you know, it was something that we worked on every day.
You get drafted by the Kansas City Kings, and it's just more of the same. You win Rookie of the Year. You average 16.5 points a game and over 8 assists per game over your first 3 seasons. And I got to tell you, I'm looking at this, and I see the numbers just drop off, and I'm thinking, what the hell happened? He had to have gotten hurt, and that's exactly what happened in 1981. Tell us about it.
I was probably having my best season as a pro then. I can't remember, but it would be close. And Lord Free, World B. Free, was making a baseball pass. I jumped up the block, and he sticks his thumb in my eye, and my thumb goes through my eyeball goes through the orbital. And what supports my eye now is a shaving from my rib. And if I hold my head a certain way, I still have double vision. And that was the beginning of some bad choices that I started making in life. You know, I didn't handle that as well as I thought as well as I should have. Instead of me picking up my bootstraps and figuring out another way to do it. But, you know, peripheral vision is kind of important to a point guard. And, you know, I just got into some bad habits, and until my spirituality, until I put both feet in the circle with my spirituality, you know, I struggled with those demons a lot of my adult life. But going back to Coach Smith, Coach Smith planted those seeds in me years ago. And I guess when Jesus Christ saw it was time for those seeds to sprout, he said, come on in. And to this day right now, everything is good in my life. I'm really happy with everything.
Do you have because of the spirituality, do you have life lessons and then you try to impart on other people, or you see other people that are struggling with different issues in life?
And that's
words of wisdom?
That's what I do now. You know, I on the speakers tour, you know, I speak to civic groups, corporations, you know, different groups. I do a lot of speaking with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And, you know, I don't have all the answers, but, you know, this is what happened to me in my life. I'm happy now, and things are going extremely well for me now. But, you know, it's not something that I try to force on people. But, you know, if you ask me about it, I'll get on a soapbox. But, you know, I'm happy to have the opportunity to share my life with people.
So we have a segment here on the show that we call 50-50. It's a trivia segment. You get a 50% chance of getting this right. And I'm going to go to a little trivial North Carolina entertainment question. So back in 1975, when this issue came out, there was a movie that came out called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest that won the Oscar.
Yep.
And there was an actress in the film named Louise Fletcher who won Best Supporting Actor, who played
She went
Nurse
to North
Cratchit.
Carolina.
Well, you just answered my question.
That was one of my favorite movies, Jack Nicholson, and that was a great movie. Yeah. But and I just recently found that out. I guess in the last 5 or 6 years that she went to North Carolina. So if she had asked me a little earlier, I wouldn't have known that.
Wow. Well, to me, the most remarkable thing about that, her parents were deaf, so she knew sign language. So she did her acceptance speech in sign language, which was pretty remarkable.
Phil, you had your number 12 retired, and you served as an assistant coach there for years. Basically, UNC basketball has been your life for 50 years, hasn't it?
Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. That just means I'm old.
I'm catching up.
You talk about all the basketball accolades, but every single time it comes back to the relationships, your teammates, your coach. In the end, that's really all that matters, isn't it?
It is in a sport like basketball. You know, it's team is number one, and that's what, you know, Coach Smith always told us. You know, he had the saying that it's what's most important for the team on the court and what's most important for the individual off the court. So on the court, it was team first.
Before there was a Michael Jordan, there was a Phil Ford, the heart and soul of North Carolina basketball. I know it's a tough day for you today, Phil. We can't thank you enough for giving us a little bit of your time and coming on the Past Our Prime podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for having me on. Those are some great questions.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
The greatest point guard and the fourth all-time leading scorer for the Tar Heels, the fantastic Phil Ford. Okay, let's move on. Tennis, anyone? Another Aussie blowout. The World Cup of Tennis, we talked about this last week. It's a match between the Aussies and the U.S., and once again, the U.S. comes up short, and a big reason is this. the United States can't get their best players to play. And by best, I mean Jimmy Connors this time, the world's top player who, I know, Bill, sit down. I'm going to tell you something you're not going to like, but
Don't do it.
Jimmy doesn't get along with USA captain Dennis Ralston. Add him to the long list of people Jimmy
Can't
has
get along with anybody.
What a shock.
Did you see what Rod Laver said? Rod Laver says tennis to this world tournament, it's a team effort, and Jimmy's not a team man. Did anybody like Jimmy Connors?
I think he didn't care to be like.
I think not only was it natural for him not to be liked, but there are some guys that get up for beating the guy across from them. They really don't like them. And Jimmy perfected not liking the guy that he was playing against.
But we talked about this. Jimmy Connors is one of the few guys that had that reputation back in the 70s that's actually never changed his persona.
No.
We don't see him anymore, but he's still probably the exact same guy.
We had Curry on, and he spoke not very glowingly about Connors, and even less so about McEnroe. And he was kind of just blown away that McEnroe's now this media darling, and everyone likes
and
McEnroe now. But my goodness, was he a pain in the ass back in the day?
Yes, he was.
Kind of like me.
Oh,
yes. That's what we were thinking.
You're more like Patrick McEnroe.
Yeah.
In the press interview room, Australian captain Fred Stoley was offered a bottle of champagne, and in typical Australian fashion, he said, "No thanks. This is our champagne." And with a smile, he held up a can of beer. Billy, probably a Foster's, right?
Oh, no question, because Foster's, as we all know, is Australian for beer. I mean, come on.
Australian for beer, mate.
Yeah, you got a knife. Oh,
this is a knife.
That never gets old, man.
No.
Sorry.
It really doesn't. It really doesn't. And pretty soon we'll finally figure out who the blonde was in Crocodile Dundee. Bill's
what's it? Linda
Kozlowski. Linda
Kozlowski's
wife in real life.
Lifting off to the playoffs. Nobody knows who the Rockets are, the Houston Rockets, that is, back then in 1975, but they're playing inspired ball led by a 5'9" guard by the name of Calvin Murphy. The Rockets have always been able to score. They just usually can't win. But now, playing just enough defense to get to 37 and 31. Along with Murphy, they have Rudy Tomjanovich, who went on to coach the Rockets to their only two NBA titles in 94 and 95 with Akeem Olajuwon, or as I like to say it, the 2 years of Michael Jordan's retirement.
That's right. That's right.
I would have loved to seen that matchup, though, because the one thing Michael, and I could be wrong, that he never had to deal with was a dominant big man. Now, Karl Malone was a dominant power forward, but not a dominant center. It would have been interesting to see if Houston could have given them a real battle in those 2 years.
An active and quick center in Olajuwon.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
He did not just sit in the post. He was out.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that Rockets had, as you mentioned, Calvin Murphy, who was only 5'9", who was shorter than his sister.
Right.
And Rudy Tomjanovich, famous for getting punched in the face by Kermit Washington, but was a great player. And then there was another player on their team, Ed Ratliff from Long State, that we had talked about when they had those one on pro.
That's right.
And all those issues. But do you know that the Rockets started off in San Diego? They were the San Diego Rockets.
Yes,
they do. From 67 to 71. And I think that's part of the reason why when they had the merger in the ABA, because the Denver team was called the Rockets too. And I think that's probably had been a factor in why they changed their name to the Nuggets. Because you don't want to be like they had in the CFL all those years, two Rough Riders.
Right. It makes sense for Houston, where NASA is, to be called the Rockets. I don't know about San Diego or Denver.
Well, you can launch a rocket from anywhere.
Well, that's true. That's a good point.
There's lakes in LA. That's why they're the Lakers, even though Minneapolis made a whole lot of sense.
There are no lakes in LA. There are puddles. They should be the LA puddles.
There you go. Puddle jumpers.
An axe can't do it alone. You need a hammer. Bill, the Vancouver Canucks have been in existence since 1970, and it is not a storied history. But in 1975, Just their 5th year of existence, they were being led by Gary the Axe Smith, a goalie who got his nickname how?
Well, because he liked to use the machete style on rival players who challenged him, sort of a la Billy Smith later on, and Mike Smith, weirdly enough, all Smith when he was with the Coyotes. Yeah, he was a guy that was he was an interesting fella, not just because of his nickname, the Axe. He also had the nickname the Suitcase because he played with so many teams. He played with 9 NHL teams, WHA NHL teams. But weirdly, the NHL has a rule named after Gary Smith. You see goalies, what do goalies do? They save the puck, they clear it out. No, not Gary Smith. Gary Smith, there's video of him carrying the puck to center ice or carrying it to the red line because he was always trying to score a goal. He was the goalie, wanted to score a goal. So right after like the 1966 season or whatever it was, they came up with the Gary Smith rule that you can't skate the puck. A goalie can't skate the puck to the red line.
Okay. So he would catch it, let's say, in his glove, and then
he'd drop it and skate to the red line and try to score.
I was picturing him holding it in his glove, just skating all the way to the ice.
He was actually stick handling with it. And there was one time he got hit really hard when he was at the blue line, basically almost knocked him out, but he still kept doing it. So the NHL said, no, stay within your crease. And they changed the rule for that. They're still there.
And that would mean that there was an empty net, obviously, So
exactly. But he never scored the goal. I think it was Hextall scored the first goal, I think.
Yeah. Funny.
Well,
Mark.
Well, I wanted to make a comment on the article on Gary Smith and the Vancouver Canucks uniforms. So they started in the league and they had the sort of a Hartford Whaler colors, the green and blue, which I think is one of the neatest. The bright green and blue is one of the best color combinations you can get. I think when the Seahawks wore those retro uniforms, they just so sharp with the green and blue. So they wore it and then they switched to red, orange, and yellow. And they had one for several years, they had a big V on their jersey. And I thought it was like the ugliest uniforms in all sports. And now the Canucks are back to the way that yellow, it's like, it's just, we're like mustard yellow that's been sitting out for like a week.
We don't want that.
Really disgusting. No. But the green and blue, that is a great color combination. So,
well, the Canucks had decent colors. I thought they were sort of a brown and orange back in the 90s when they were actually a good team with John McClain and guys like that. But yeah, their colors weren't good, and the team was actually terrible. We all know about Vegas, and they won their Stanley Cup. Was it the 4th year? Yeah. Vancouver had 2 winning seasons after their inception, 74-75. And didn't have another winning season for 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just a bad. They're a good organization now. After the 90s and then the Sedins came in, they've been a pretty good team.
3 Stanley Cup appearances in 55 years for Vancouver, and they lost the finals all 3 times. So they're kind of the Clippers of the NHL.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good comparison.
That old sinking feeling. This is a quick little thing on putting and golf. They give 10 tips on how to help with your putting. I'm just going to give you one of them. Tip number 5, never squat down in tight pants. I think that's a good rule for pretty much anything you're doing.
Has that ever happened to you, rip your pants like that? Squatting down?
I think, yeah.
I think when I was in high school, that's when it happened the most. But as an adult,
it's okay. It's okay if it splits like underneath the crotch area because no one can really see that. It's when it splits in the back, then you're in trouble.
We took my daughter to a place called Scooter's Jungle, and I was playing with her in the little bouncy houses. And I came out, I was having fun, and this lady comes up and says, "Bill, I got to talk to you." My pants had split from the back of the belt all the way down my leg, so everything was just there. Thankfully, I wear underkit. They came up and they said, "You might want to go change." I mean, it ripped all the way down.
Little man with a big punch. Let me introduce the world to one Roberto Duran, one of the greatest fighters of all time. It's kind of a shame that part of his legacy is the second Sugar Ray fight, the infamous No Moss fight, when he just quit midway through the fight. But in 75, he was just coming into his own, and he was something. The lightweight champion, he had just beaten #1 contender Ray Lampkin, knocked him out in the 13th round, and I mean knocked him out. He was out for 80 minutes and in the hospital for 5 days. I mean,
hands of stone, man.
Yeah, he was a tough son of a gun, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he also said, what he say is the best teacher to him is a hit on the head. That makes me think, how do I not want to get hit in the head the same way again? I don't know if I need to be hit in the head to learn that, but good for him.
Well,
Now, do you know who his last fight was against?
Well, it was probably just a few years ago. Who was it?
It was in 2001 to Hector Macho Camacho.
Oh, wow.
Ah.
Yeah. Another fun boxer from those years. So it was
And I have two pieces of trivia for you when you get.
yeah, go.
I got to stand next to Roberto Duran. I did a story when I was doing my blog in Vegas. He's not a tall guy, but he's thick.
No.
Really thick, even though this was whatever 2007 or whatever, just really, really thick.
Is that when you knocked him out?
Oh, I took a shot at it. Everyone was there. Lennox Lewis, Larry Holmes. I was hitting everybody. You name it.
It's like
Bring it on.
you go into the elevator with four boxers, they close it,
Yes.
you hear all this noise, the elevator opens, and you're the only one walking out.
Yep.
I just kept repeating everything Clubber Lang said in Rocky 3. That seemed to go really good with them all.
But so here are the two pieces of trivia for you. Ready?
Hey, that's right.
One, he was a licensed pilot. Did you know that?
Oh.
And he played a drug lord on Miami Vice, on an episode of Miami Vice.
Wow.
Hey, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Didn't he have how many? I think I saw how many fights he had. Didn't he have these like 107, 11, and 4 or something like that?
He was 103 and 16 with 70.
Oh my gosh.
119.
That's a lot of hits in the head.
That is.
He says he learned to fight on the streets of Panama, and getting hit seems to piss him off. They write that, quote, his head seems to be made of cement, end quote, which is something, since Duran said at the end of the article, they do not call me Manos de Piedra for nothing, he says proudly. Ask Lampkin. Manos de Piedra means hands of stone, which would become, of course, his famous nickname. He'd go on to hold world championships in 4 weight classes: lightweight, welterweight, light middleweight, and middleweight. That middleweight class, he might have gotten in there just a little bit too late for him, but maybe the best group of fighters in one era at one time ever. Hey, college hoops. Earlier this year, we had Raiders great Phil Villapiano on, a proud graduate of Bowling Green, also where Bill Mahorny's mother went to school. And Bill,
That's right.
tell me about the Greens' Jeff Montgomery.
Jeff Montgomery is a guy that has his own little name there. They call him at Bowling Green University. The Falcons call it something. It's called a Montgomery. A Montgomery is defined as anything that is too weird to be believed. Since that you can't really, I can't show you the video. Montgomery would have things like balls bouncing off the rim and just actually going right back to him and hitting shots that won games. He would bounce balls off guys' face and back to him, and he would score points. He was a great player. But the one thing I thought that just didn't seem right, maybe it is a Montgomery, he said before a game, a really important game for Central Michigan, he downed 23 beers.
Wow.
Really?
23. So you're talking.
And how much time?
Almost, 212.
Taste of beer. Yeah.
Damn, but I'm saying Jeff Montgomery was a good player. He didn't, go on and play pros or anything like that. But for at least his time with the Falcons of Bowling Green, he was a good player, someone they could count on to do pretty much everything on the court, scoring, assists, and having a little luck his way when he would flip the ball around to people.
And he could drink beers like a son of a bitch.
Man, just thinking, I hate those. I don't know how many beers I could drink back in college, but boy, 23 is and he didn't come. I think it was like 6 feet, so it wasn't like he was 6'10", 260.
Right. Elsewhere, Mark, USC almost beat UCLA, but that's kind of a annual thing for them back then, right? Almost close but no cigar. They were actually down by 13 points at the half, came back, rallied, and tied the game at 68 with 36 seconds to play. But then our prior guest, Pete Turkovich, stole a pass, was fouled, and converted 2 free throws. Marcus Johnson sank a layup at the buzzer. UCLA wins 72-68. And that, by the way, sewed up their 9th straight Pac-8 title. Opening of the Catfish season. This one hurts. After 3 straight World Series titles with my A's, the dynasty starts to break apart. And the first piece of that was when Catfish Hunter went to New York to play with the Yankees, now in spring training in Florida. Catfish is loving it because fishing, of course. Not a lot of fishing out here in Arizona. Yankees also have Bobby Bonds on the team, as both guys from the Bay Area, now in the Big Apple. Wouldn't help them in 75. Red Sox go on to win the division in 75, but the Yankees have a little bit of a run starting in 76, and Catfish is a big part of that. Brother, can you spare a car? Bill, what was this?
That's AJ Foyt. He's going to be on one of the magazines coming up here in 1975. He won over $90,000 for winning the California 500, which was raced in Ontario, California. The top speed, 154 miles an hour. AJ Foyt is an amazing runner, and he's still alive. What is he, 95 years old? 90 years old? Just amazing. You said you went to Ontario. You saw a race there.
I know. I remember we would always go down to Palm Springs, and you drive back, and the 60 was a little faster than the 10 if you wanted to take that. And the 60, you would drive right by the racetrack. And, this was before the Fontana. This was like an old racetrack. The Fontana one is a nice, with all the bells and whistles and stuff like that. But that Ontario Raceway, as a kid, I always found it fascinating driving by this racetrack right off the freeway.
But I'm saying back in those days, I didn't follow race much. I didn't follow racing much. But you knew that name, AJ Foyt.
Everybody knew that name. Everyone.
And Unser, Al Unser. You just knew, like there's 4 or 5 names. Nowadays, I couldn't tell you pretty much any of them. But back in the day, I didn't know a lot about racing, but I did know those names.
Well, Jeremy just said, I know that name. So
there you go.
He knows it,
I know it's good.
Frozen hell in a cock shell. Now, like Bill said, this sounds like a porno, but Mark, I'm pretty sure it's not, right?
No, it is not. It's about the explorer Ernest Shackleton leading a British expedition across the Antarctica. I think they tried to cross 11,700 miles.
Yeah, in 1914, 1915. And let's just say things didn't go as planned. It's a long story. I don't know, once again, what it really has to do with sports, but it's about the men and the sinking of the ship, which it did in November of 15. All of the men on board were able to get off the ship, and all 144 of them survived. And the ship survived as well, kind of. It sunk 10,000 feet to the bottom of the ocean floor. But in March of 2022, 107 years after it went down, the Endurance was discovered and is, quote, in a brilliant state of preservation. So,
wow. You need to see this. You can read the name on the back of the ship. It is just
really.
It is like it sunk like last week, not like 100+ years ago.
107 years ago. Isn't that crazy?
Because the water is so cold. It just it preserves things that deep.
Yeah, I think Lynn Cox swam down to it.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Exactly.
She would swim over it, but
yeah.
Right. No, an unbelievable story, no doubt. For the record, Bill.
Yeah, ABA, Indiana Pacers. They're the only team to win 3 league titles in the 8-year history, but they get to the NBA. They've only been to 1 NBA Finals where they got beaten by the Lakers. Didn't really translate how their greatness, ABA to NBA.
Yeah, Shaq and Kobe beat them.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe that's why they were one of the teams that merged, because they were so successful in the ABA.
That's true, but it's unfortunate because I think San Antonio's won. Obviously, Denver won a few years ago. What was the other ABA teams that went over?
Let's see, the Nuggets.
The Nuggets won.
The Nets.
The Nets, yeah, they're never going to win.
Yeah, the Nets, the Spurs, and the Pacers. Those are the 4 teams.
Yeah,
and the Pacers only been to the finals once, but they played Knicks games in the conference finals.
Oh yeah, with Reggie Miller.
That were pretty fantastic. But you're right.
What's that? 9 points in like 4 seconds, whatever Reggie Miller did.
Right. That was fantastic. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah.
Well, I got that the World Golf Hall of Fame has inducted American golfer Willie Anderson. And who is Willie Anderson? Well, Willie Anderson was a dominant golfer on the circuit in the turn of the century. He won the U.S. Open in 1901, 1903, 1904, and 1905. He's the first to ever win 4 U.S. Opens. But he died when he was only 31 years old. He died in 1910. He died of epilepsy, I believe. And he was actually playing like some golf like days before he died, too. So it was very sudden. But obviously someone a lot of people have not heard of, but dominant in his brief time a long time ago.
Faces in the crowd. Phil Maher of White Pass, Washington, won the giant slalom title at the U.S. National Alpine Ski Championship in Mission Ridge, Washington. It was his first competition in 15 months because of a twice broken right leg. Maher was second to his twin brother, Steve, in the slalom. Two of the greatest alpine skiers in U.S. history. Phil would go on to win a couple of medals in the Olympics. And this was once again a time when we actually knew skiers by name. Those days are long gone.
That's right. That's so true there.
Mark?
I got one on Hal Fishman. At the time, he was only 36 years old. They described him as a Los Angeles television newscaster. He flew a twin-engine Aerostar from Santa Monica to Sacramento and back at an average speed of 305 miles an hour to set international aviation records. He holds 8 speed and altitude marks. And I remember Hal Fishman. He was the lead anchor at KTLA Channel 5 News in Los Angeles. His year was the year. This issue came out in 1975. His last year, 2007, 32 years as being Mr. Reliable on Channel 5 KTLA News.
Bill, what do you got?
Oh, come on. Phil Maher, Hal Fishman. My guy doesn't stand up. I'll do Greg Joy, though, because he's good. Greg Joy, in the issue, he's just a UT freshman, but he would actually go on and win a silver medal for Canada in the 1976 Olympics in Montreal. And he was so important, he got to carry the flag in the closing ceremonies.
Wow.
So my guy stands up to you guys.
He does, no question.
Didn't Three Dog Night write a song about him, Joy to the World?
They did, Mark. That's exactly there. Yeah, all the boys and girls. Joy to the Fishies and the Deep Blue Sea, and Greg Joy and me. Yeah.
Jeremiah was a bullfrog.
Eggs, he was too. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
He was a friend of mine too.
You know, I loved Three Dog Night. You know how they got their name?
Because there's
they saw three dogs one night?
No, it's an Alaskan or Eskimo term. If it's a really cold night, you would sleep with your sled dogs. So, like, if it was cold, it's a 1 sled dog night. If it's really cold, 2, and if it's frigid, it'd be a 3-dog night.
I guess that's the men on the Endurance. It was 3-dog night for quite a few nights.
Well, when we all meet in Arizona, we're going to use that trivia on some lucky ladies out there, and we'll see how far that goes. You want to hear a story about 3-dog night? Mark.
One of the lead singers.
To wrap it up, I'm going to get rid of this nonsense. I want to thank Phil Ford for joining us from his busy day back in North Carolina. Talked about that great Tar Heels team. Shows you what an impact a coach can have. Phil Ford's now, I want to say 69 years old, and he still can't get over how Dean Smith impacted his life and turned him around. So I want to thank him for joining us. Guys, any parting thoughts?
Phil Ford's awesome.
Yeah, I thought he was a fantastic guest.
Phil Ford's amazing.
All right. Until next week when we've got Chuck Wepner on the Covener. Oh, can't wait to talk about the guy who inspired the movie Rocky. That's next week. Until then, for Bill, for Mark, I'm Scott, and we are past our prime.